Hello guys, my name is Cindy Guchi. I'm the host of the program Sharing with Guchi. This program is a 30 to 45 minutes video featuring a dialogue between me and guests from various parts of the world who share experiences, knowledge, and best practices related to gender or feminism themes. The program aims to provide a space for discussion between me as an Indonesian woman and women from other countries about interesting topics and how their perspectives are related to the current issues. Happy watching! So guys, now that we are in the second episode, I invite a friend of mine. She comes from India, her name is Sanchali, talking about her experience as a lecturer at one of the universities in Calcutta, India. As known, gender equality in India is a complex and multifaceted issue, reflecting a mix of significant progress and ongoing challenges. With me, Guchi, let's share. So, Sanchali, so nice to meet you. And thank you for coming and being my guest in this talk show. I'm Cindy Guchi, and I'm glad to invite you to discuss about this interesting topic.
Thank you so much, Cindy, and so nice to meet you too.
Yes.
And I'm very happy to be speaking on the subject because it's such a topical issue, and the kind of work that you do, it's very enterprising and very important. So I'm glad to be a part of it. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. First, introduce yourself, like your name, what's your job, your daily activities, your hobbies, and if you have social media, you can share with us.
Well, I'm Sanchali, as you've already said. So I'll just correct you one bit because I'm not a lecturer at a university here. I teach as a guest lecturer in a college, which of course is affiliated under City University, Calcutta University. And I'm currently a doctoral researcher at the University of Passau in Germany. I'm working remotely at the moment. I was in Germany in April. And my work focuses a lot on gender. So that also got me interested in the work that you do, your organization does. Hobbies, I have several, but when someone asks me, I tend to, cannot really decide on which one to say. So I love traveling. I love cafe hopping and binge watching. So these are the things. And one thing that I cannot do without is reading books, which at the moment is on hold because it's my reading now has focused more on the research that I'm doing instead of just pleasure. So, and about the social media handle, yes, I'm pretty active on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, which is X now. So, and I'm there by my name, Sanchali Sarkar. So yeah, that's about it. I mean, again, I'm very happy to be part of this episode.
Yeah, let's start the sharing with the one question. Could you explain how the current situation of gender equality is in this moment, like in India? Are women and men in India really equal or not? If not, can you give us some example in the field of education, political participation, economics, etc.?
Well, of course, we are nowhere near to equality, and I think when we have to start, when we discuss equality, gender equality, the first thing that we need to address is equity. And an equal world is an equitable world. So, one simple answer to the question is no, we are not equal yet. And even after that, if we categorize women, there are other divisions in that category as well. So where we have the intersections of caste, class. Caste is a huge thing in India. It's a very important factor that affects lives negatively. And so there is caste, there's religion, there is sexuality. All these come into consideration even when we are talking about the category of women. So we cannot really homogenize the category. But even if we do, for the sake of the question, no, we are not equal yet. And there are various reasons as to how we could analyze and come to that conclusion that we are not equal. Like, we talk about, education, access to education. I mean, there still is, a very huge gap between the number of male students enrollment and female students enrollment. And now, Cindy, we cannot really talk about anything without the pandemic situation, how it has changed our perspective and everything around us. So in India, during the pandemic, there were huge chunks of dropouts by female students, and they just got married. They were married off at very early age, and that brings me to the next factor, that is child marriage in India, and that's again, that's an evil in our society. And the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act was just passed in 2006. Men would have to be age 21 and women have to be age 18 in order to get married. But as you know very well, that this goes without saying, that there is a discrepancy between theory and practice, implementation, and what's the kind of schemes that our government has, not just the current government, right after our country's independence in 1947, there has been quite a number of schemes for the empowerment of women, for women's equal access to education, public sphere and everything, professional sphere. But again, when it comes down to implementation, it's still in its very nascent stage. I'd like to point out this very important event that took place in 1997, and this kind of gave rise to this initiated what was called Vishaka guidelines, which was basically a procedural guidelines for how the employer of an organization would tackle sexual harassment of their female employees or male employees for that matter. But the event actually, the reason why the Supreme Court came up with the Vishaka guidelines is that there was this woman called Bhanwari Devi who was working for an organization, and she tried to prevent child marriage in the state of Rajasthan. So this is the western part of our country. And she was gang raped for trying to prevent child marriage. And this was not just a gender thing, there was also the class factor and the caste factor here, because the woman who tried to prevent the child marriage, she belonged to a marginalized community. And she was trying to prevent the marriage of a girl who was from the quote-unquote upper class community. So the men, of course, were not really happy about it. So they figured that they could just gang rape and punish her. And this kind of created an upheaval. There were, female feminist activists who came. They started a platform which was called Vishaka. And the reason why was because all these rapists were allowed to go free. And they were not punished. So as a protest, they created this platform called Vishaka, and from there the Supreme Court created this Vishaka guidelines. And this did not end there, because the prevention, the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace, which is Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act, was passed in 2013. So you could say that the foundation was in the Vishaka guidelines. And it's very unnerving and it's very disturbing to realize that nothing of this sort was there before 1997. So one had to be gang raped in order to get the people of the country to think about coming up with a guideline for women who are harassed at their workplace. Going back to your question, I mean, there's no one way of answering it. So I think one of the reasons why we have not yet achieved gender equality is because there is this gap between implementation and what is being written in law. And I think this is something that many agree that the Indian law is very feminist. But when it comes to implementation, it's not implemented properly, even with the schemes that the government is coming up with. It's being advertised very well, but again, not everyone is getting access to it. So since our country is structurally so patriarchal and is so steep, I mean, it's deep-rooted with, gender stereotypes. It becomes very impossible to unlearn those, and it's also a task to sensitize people around us. And since when I was introducing myself, I said that I'm a teacher. As a teacher, I try to sensitize my students, and it's not really a very easy task. But if I could just sensitize even one student, I think that's a good job.
Yeah. And but I heard about India still has this selective abortion for females. That's still nowadays. Is it still real, or it's just in the past years?
Selective abortion in the sense, well, there were many cases where the court took a lot of time to come to a decision as to whether a rape victim could abort her child or not. By the time they took the decision, it was already over the stipulated period where you can get an abortion without hampering or harming your health, your body. There is a reason why sex determination is illegal in India, because even though illegally it happens in many parts of the country, because whenever they detect that it's a female fetus, they tend to abort it because they do not want a woman. They do not want a girl because there's a burden of getting that girl married. There's a lot of loss in terms of financial loss attached to a girl child. And because you have to get that girl married, and this question of the dowry. I'm sure you know about this dowry system in India. It's again another evil which sort of us kind of it is an obstacle for overcoming gender inequality in India. So the Dowry Prevention Act was passed in 1961, but even now I can point to this 2022 report where dowry death cases in India amounted to nearly 6.4 thousand. Can you imagine? Even though it's a gradual decrease. 2014, it was 8.5 thousand, but 6.4 thousand, it's still a lot. And even though there is a law in place, and it was placed in 1961, but nothing really happens.
Okay. So this is really interesting, because in many other Asian countries, the dowry system is the way around, right? Like the man give the bride family the money, and not the way around like in India. So I think it's really interesting.
Okay. Yes, I've read about it. I mean, here, you know what, Cindy, there are people would go, the groom's family would go and say, see, I don't want a dowry, but I was thinking if you could give us a car, if you could give us an apartment. So there are different, instead of calling it dowry, they just talk about gifts, but it's the same. You just open the newspaper every morning, and I can guarantee you, I'm very sad, so that you will come across at least 3 to 4 reports on violence related to dowry problems. So this is something that it's, even though, like I said, it has gradually decreased since 2014 from 8.5 to Now it's 6.4. It's still a lot.
A lot, yeah.
You know.
So I think if I heard your stories, like the challenges actually to implement the gender equality in India is not easy because like the challenges is within the cultures, the caste system.
And if you are aware of the current political climate of our country, you'd see it's a very Islamophobic one. And
Okay.
yeah, so it's another challenge. And so it's alongside the caste factor, the class factor, you also have the religious factor where Muslim women are treated differently. I mean, it's very difficult for you know, someone to talk about the gender scenario in India without addressing all these factors, because
it's connected, right?
it's impossible.
Yeah,
it's all connected.
Okay. Yeah, let's move to another question. So earlier we talked about an overview of the implementation of gender equality in India, which is not easy, if I heard your stories. And now let's delve deeper into the efforts towards gender equality. You already mentioned about the Visaka guideline, like some organization or some people want to against like this gender and equality. But has the Indian government or the government initiative attempted to achieve more gender equality?
The current government does give a lot of effort, but it doesn't really reach the people concerned, in this case, the women concerned. Our population, I mean, it's not really an urban population. So there are women
I understand,
in the rural. So it has to be grassroots level, and not just that. I think, how do I put this? I was also discussing this with my partner, saying how much should I talk about the current government, because it has become a challenge for, you know, those in academia and in activism to talk, you know, very you know, openly about the not so functioning government, Indian government at the moment. The thing is, because most of the population comes from the rural background, and somehow, you know, there are governmental schemes, but there is another factor that we need to consider, that is the current government, which is ideologically right-wing, gives a lot of preference to, you know, conventional gender roles. So women should be, you know, in the domestic sphere, not so much in the professional sphere or the public sphere. And this is something that is not just you know, conditioned. This is not just brainwashed into them through schemes, but, you know, through media, through you know, social media, through, you know, digital media, everything. And this has affected, you know, women, and in the sense the whole community, to understand where their actual place is. So our state government has a scheme called Rupasri, which is basically for women, for girls, to get them married off after their education, of course, because they also have a scheme called Kanyasri, which is you know, helping these girls you know, graduate high school graduation. But the Rupasri thing is such where somehow the government is encouraging the girl's family to get them married. There are two ways of looking at it, because there are families that cannot really afford a marriage. So the amount of money that the government is giving them would actually help them with the whole, you know, celebration or whatever. And then there another side where you're not really giving from you know, preference to the education. You're more into, okay, let the girl pass you know, the her high school graduate, let her get done with the high school graduation, and that's about it, and maybe she could get married, and that's it. The money that the government is giving for the women to get married off, I mean, this is important for most of the population, because, like I said, our country is a poor country. We need the money, and it's a fairly rural population. So apparently it seems like a very progressive kind of a scheme, but if you investigate, if you analyze it, you'd see that it's actually it's like going backwards. And I'm not going to say that none of these are ineffectual, but there are schemes that are benefiting girls, women. But overall, we can see that it's not really doing what it's supposed to be doing, or it's not functioning the right way. And it's also because there is not just a gender gap, but there is a huge gap between the people in power and the civilians. So that is another reason why there is this discrepancy.
Yeah, it's not easy. How about the NGOs? Is there any NGO for this?
Yeah, there are a lot of NGOs. I have worked with an NGO myself. I still am. They are doing a lot of advocating for rights. I am from West Bengal. I live in a town near Calcutta. So there are several NGOs dealing with domestic violence or the queer community, supporting the queer community, like lesbians in India, lesbians in West Bengal. So with the NGOs' grassroots presence, there's community engagement, and there are advocacy efforts, and there's also this interest of capacity building that helps people, or women in this case, to form a sort of solidarity and empathize with each other's stories and narratives. I mean, we cannot do without these non-governmental organizations, because, especially if, again, there's the other side. I mean, if those women have that access to get in touch with the NGOs, but there are many helplines, and especially during the pandemic, domestic violence was on a rise in India, and many NGOs, and like the NGO I worked with, I mean, they opened a helpline 24/7 where women could just call and talk, and we could offer support. So they do promote gender equality. They try to promote gender equality.
That's cool. Yeah. And I'm just curious if how is about you say about the rural areas in India is not easy for these topics, but how about in the big city in this modern time? Is a woman like us, could we in India like working, or just like in the housewife, you have to stay at home? I mean, in the rural area, maybe like that, but in the big cities in India, is nowadays is still like that or not?
But in the rural areas, I would say that not everyone's a housewife. They work. In fact, they work, but they're underpaid, and so they're exploited. They're underpaid. I mean, there's a huge wage gap, and there are many who work as day laborers, who work as domestic workers. They travel from the villages or the suburbs to the city to come to work. And about the urban situation, well, I do not know the statistics. I'm sorry about that, but I think overall scenario has changed, because in the rural area, it's not just women who are doing domestic work, even though that's like the unrecognized kind of work. They're not paid, but they're still working at home. That is something that we find in the urban areas as well. And especially the marriage thing is such an important thing in our society, in the Indian society, that it's as if you're not married, you're not, and you're not a successful person. So going back to gender stereotypes, once you're married, there's a lot of, obstacles that a woman has to face. I'm not saying that everyone has to. I have been very privileged that I did not have to face that. But I know many who are well educated in, they are working professionals, but they have to face questions like, why are you working? Why can't you stay at home? Or why aren't you having a baby? So it's not really, I would say, maybe I'm being very crass about it. It's not really a rural and an urban situation. It's more of a individual situation or
Okay.
single unit. It depends, because I have met many women who are from the rural area who are much more sensitized than women who are from the urban area. And there are many women who would not be interested in working at all. So once they're married, they have their husband, they don't want to work. Whereas I've seen many women and I have interacted with rural women and part of my job when I was working on a project was to interact with women who are from the rural background.
Okay.
They were empowered, they worked, they took care of their families. So so like I said, it's not really a rural-urban divide in this case when it comes to women working. It's more about individual preference.
Good. Yeah, let's move to the last segment. In this segment, we would like to know Sanchali's hope as an Indian woman regarding the implementation of gender equality and her message to other Indian women. So, Sanchali, what is your hope as an Indian woman for the future of women in India or women in the world? Do you have any message, especially maybe for Indian women to be participating or contributing for gender equality?
Oh yeah, I can just go on talking on this issue because I have so much to say. But I think I wanted to share this article. I was just reading this article in the morning as a preparation for this episode, and this was written by Maya John for a Jacobin, for the Jacobin digital magazine. And she talks about how women became backwards during the current government in India. And I think she gives a lot of reasons, and those are valid reasons. But at the end, she writes how Indian women have been in the very forefront of numerous movements against discriminatory citizenship laws like the CAA and NRC that we have going on, and against sexual violence, against anti-labor policies, against pro-corporate farm laws or dispossession. And those movements where women were at the forefront, they have all challenged the legitimacy of the ruling dispensation. So I think there's a lot of hope because I get inspired by women like them. I get inspired from my peers because even knowing that they can get into trouble talking about certain issues, they still talk about it. They advocate for a just and equal platform for Indian women. And I think it's not just an Indian scenario. Everywhere around the world, you are doing it. Anna is doing it. I'm doing it in my own way. And I think, like I said in the beginning, as a teacher, I feel it's also a responsibility, not just the governments or the NGOs, but as teachers, we also hold the responsibility to instill certain awareness in our own too. And I think the way to do that is a lot of sensitization, a lot of unlearning these patriarchal constructs, these gendered stereotypes that we are still kind of influenced by, and it's so hard to get out of it. But I think baby steps will do. I mean, if we all try to do it together, I think we can form a platform, and we can only hope for a just it's a long way to go, but I think the journey matters, and it's changing, and let's see how it works.
Yeah, it's a progress, right? For something like that.
Yeah, it's not a overnight thing. So the more we unlearn, the more we sensitize, not just ourselves, but people around. And it's a tough job. Like if I talk to a friend who is not really interested in all this, it becomes difficult for you to kind of positively influence that person. But again, those who are in the business, those of us who are in the business, this particular business, we still try, and the least we can do is keep trying, right?
Yeah, that's cool. I feel motivated. Thank you. So guys, our sharing for today. It was really great to hear more about these gender equality topics in India from Sanchali. It's really interesting and motivated stories. Thank you so much, Sanchali, for your time, for your sharing, and we are so happy to hear it.
Thank you so much, Cindy. Thank you. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
So guys, hope you like it. If you have opinions or relevant stories about this, please share it in the comments. Don't forget to like our videos and subscribe to our channel. So see you on the next sharing. Sanchali, what's the bye-bye in your language? Like in Hindi, or what's your language?
You know, my mother tongue is Bengali, but we say bye bye. Bye bye is a universal term, I guess, or tata or whatever.
Good, let's say together. Bye bye.
Yeah, bye bye. Bye.